Hello and welcome to this session on digital identity. In this session, we're going to talk about what makes up your digital identity, why it's important, how you can improve your different identities and potentially collate them. We won't be covering other digital skills such as digital creation, like building a portfolio and things like that, just because they can be mentioned in a much broader topic just because they can be mentioned in their workshops, but also it's a good activity to do on your own and then with someone as well. So we won't be covering that in today's session. To get started, let's discuss what digital identity is. So digital identity is how you develop and present yourself in online spaces. So a very easy way to think about this is think about how many social media platforms you might be currently using. So this can be things like a professional social media platform like LinkedIn, where you're sharing and discussing what you do in your professional life, but it can also be a personal account as well. So this can be Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, and each one of those will have its own footprint, which can be traced back to that account. When we're thinking about these different accounts, we're thinking as well as how they can all be linked together. Generally, by default, unfortunately, a lot of these platforms don't have the privacy settings set up correctly. So what happens is you're able to either follow someone's name through a different chain of social medias, or you can follow the email for the exact same result. And very quickly, you're able to build up a personality or an identity of someone online because all of that information's there. Basically, what I'm trying to say is someone is able to track you through your different social media accounts. So I'm going to ask a question, just so you all start thinking about this now, is think about how many social media accounts you might have. Now, this doesn't have to be things like Instagram and Facebook, as I know some people don't use these. These can be things like forums, so maybe you're posting on Reddit to find out some information about something you're doing. But it could also be something like a news article where you comment below in the description box about a particular topic. Think about how many you have and start to think about if you would want those to be separate. And if so, how do you make them work together to benefit you as well? So what I mean by this is, do you have certain accounts that you would only want professional people to see? Or do you have accounts that, is very much just for your social friends circle to look at? So that could be maybe, for example, you're going out on a nice day trip, maybe you've hit a few pubs. You don't potentially want your business world to see that side of you. So how do you go about separating that? Do you separate that? It's totally fine if you don't, because in this session, I'm going to talk about separating those out. One thing I want to talk about is intentional versus unintentional identity. So this is what you post versus what others post about you. So intentional is what you're going to be posting. So let's say we frame this in the world of LinkedIn. You're going to be posting about what work you're doing. You might post what achievements you do. Maybe you've done something at work. The unintentional side of that is, what if someone starts posting about you? Okay, so think about your different contacts, or if you've attended an event and someone started taking photos. Are these things that you want to be involved in? Oftentimes you can talk to the person, or you just let them know, I'm not comfortable with this being online, and they're more than happy to take it off or edit it so you're not in it anymore. Sometimes this can be a very useful thing to do, just in the sense of if you're attending something work related, it can be very beneficial just as a nice piece of CPD. Hello, I've attended this workshop. You can see here I am in this photo and I'm connecting with my community, for example. It helps you build a presence in that space. So it can be very helpful. On the flip side, maybe you've gone a bit too hard and you've partied too much. Is that something you want to be sharing around with people who's in your industry, potential bosses and things like that? So think about what you're posting and think about how that can come back to you. When we're thinking about what identities we have, you might hear the term digital footprint. Now, this can be called a number of different things. So this could be called a digital shadow or a personality or an electronic footprint. But generally, all of these terms refers to the data trail you've left behind when using the internet. Now, this is a very wide thing, and I will break it into two different sections, okay? So I'd say you have the surface level, which, you can do a bit of digging and connect everything together. But what this means is all of your different accounts and how they connect, okay? So if we're thinking about Instagram and Facebook, those two connect very quickly because they use one account to generate two profiles. And if your settings aren't correctly set up, those can be linked back to you. That creates one profile. If you're using things like a link tree where you showcase different profiles on a profile, so a good example is Instagram, you might say, press my link tree to see my other social medias. All of those social medias then fall into one personality in one bracket. So that's built into one identity. Now, this can be a very powerful thing, especially if you're working in the industry and you're wanting to build up some brand recognition. You can have multiple social medias connected all to one. However, if there is one potentially personal account that if you think about it, you're thinking, maybe I don't want individuals to see that identity. That's where you've got to start thinking and breaking it down and separating the personal to professional, or maybe you've got even more categories than that to then break that down so they're not so closely linked together. On the other side, and this is the second part of the footprint, is websites by nature. They track a lot of information. So even if you don't have an account somewhere, they can track you through cookies and collect a lot of data to build a profile on yourself. So even though you might be incognito or you think you're hidden, generally, if you're pressing on something on the internet, people like your internet provider or even just companies looking to collect information on understanding their consumer base, they're able to then track and build a profile based on you. Generally speaking, this oftentimes isn't damaging to you as an individual. It's more of them trying to sell you an item, which, yes, is very annoying. And I'd always recommend to disable cookies whenever the little annoying notification link pops up at the bottom of the page, just because I personally don't want people gathering my information. But what I'm trying to say here is, even though you might not have an account, it's still generating you a profile and footprint that can be traced back to you as well. So it's really important to be aware of what you're accessing, just because later on down the line, it might come back to bite you. So just be aware. I have some more questions to ask, just because I want you to start thinking about what is available to the public based on what you've got yourself. So think about what profiles are public. If you're not sure, start accessing your different profiles, whether that is social media or things like LinkedIn, and check your privacy settings. Oftentimes, things like Facebook and Instagram, they are open by default, which means anyone can access them as long as they found you, or they might have your name. So be sure to be aware of what is public. Think about what is connected to other accounts. So what do you make connected, and what might be connected through something like your privacy settings showing your email. How easy is that to trace back? One thing I always recommend people to do is just Google yourself. Think about some of the names that you might use online, whether that's a particular username, whether that is your first and last name, and just see what's out there, okay? For example, I know if I Google myself, there will be my LinkedIn. I know it will have my work page with my little profile on. Generally, it won't show my social media just because I use some different usernames on my different accounts anyway. But as you can see, I can Google myself. I can see some of the content around me already start to form that digital footprint. So Google yourself, see what's out there. Start to collate all of that information because it can be quite useful. And if you see something that you're thinking, maybe I've not built up as much of a presence, maybe if you type your name in and there's not anything there, you can consider creating some stuff. But on the flip side, if there's something you're thinking, I don't want potential employers to see that, maybe it's time to start to see if you can restrict and remove that content as well. An important thing to say, just while we're on that topic, is nothing is ever truly gone from the internet. So be aware of what you post online, okay? Because these things, they can and often do crop back up in the future. Some more questions to think about then is, does what you Google and have found online represent what you want people to know about you? What do you want people to know about you? Which is quite important because this helps build into things like reputation management, okay? So what do you want people to see? Maybe you are trying to build a brand, how much information of the brand's out there? Do you have things like a about me section which talks about all of the amazing work you're doing, or is it just got a link to a product? Okay, oftentimes people are looking for these stories of why they should get invested with a brand. So often if you're googling something about yourself and you're seeing either a really helpful video for someone, or even if it's just you talking about an achievement, it's quite a positive thing. Okay, if we're talking about identities, okay, also think about what other people have posted about you as well. So a really good thing just to do is go on to things like Instagram or Facebook and just see about tagged comments or posters or even photos, and just think, do you want these public? Okay, oftentimes you can either remove yourself from a tag, but I would always recommend talking to someone and making sure that they know how their identity is being handled as well. Photos are great, especially when you're sharing them out. I think it's nice to have a very nice picture book of everything you've been up to in the last couple years. But unfortunately, sometimes, an image can come back to bite you. So it's really important that we manage that identity there. You can set up things like Google Alerts, so you can review different mentions or tags. So this can be a great thing if you have collated all of your different profiles. Instead of going through each one of them and then manually sorting through each one, you can set up a thing like a Google Alert, and it will look for every time your account's been mentioned, or maybe you've created a particular hashtag, and you'll be alerted every time that gets mentioned or used. Sometimes, depending on the platform, that can also mean how many times that's been accessed, which can be helpful when you're gathering things like analytics. So maybe you're wanting to track the customer traffic through a certain link. Things like Google Alerts can be quite useful for that too. So be sure to have a look at that, see if it works out for you. So let's talk now about developing a digital identity. What I would recommend doing, and this goes for anyone, is having 2 separate footprints that you can manage. Okay? That's going to be a professional one and a personal one. Now, you don't have to stick to these, you can create more, but I always recommend just having these 2 because it allows you to keep things off limit and private and in your own life and your own bubble. So think about what you keep off limits, separate those 2 worlds out from each other just because it helps you develop your own professional life versus your personal life. Personal life is great for keeping in contact with people people that you want to see these types of photos. But remember, when it comes to your professional life, it's your professional foot forward through the door, okay? It's really important when you step through the door, someone's made an assumption within the first 10 seconds about you. It's the exact same thing online. They're going to Google you. What is the first few posts they'll see about you? If they're seeing a picture of you a little bit drunk at a pub, it's probably not the best, first impression. Where if they see this professional looking profile with varying amount of different posts about different topics, it puts you in a much better precedence moving forward with them. So what I'd recommend doing is to start networking and developing a professional profile if you haven't done already. If you have done, that's great. For people who haven't, the first place I'd recommend is LinkedIn, okay? Because what this allows you to do is it allows you to start connecting and networking with people that you can relate to. Now, this can be career-wise. It could be people who are in your industry doing different things, but it can also be people with different interests or interests that you're wanting to get into. For example, so for me, I follow a lot of people in education just because that's what I work in, but I also am very passionate about filming and doing sort of different adverts and things like that. So I also connect with people who are in that industry as well, because that allows me not only to build those strong connections and foundations, but also keeps me in the loop with relevant news as well. So think about, how you're connecting with people. So I've put a great example on the slide here is think about networking with people. Okay, so I've created a quick message here. I wouldn't say I would use this all the time. This is just a very generic message. So please feel free to use it, but, modify it, make it a little bit more personalized. But there is real importance in putting your best foot forward, okay, and contacting people. Some people like to see a good LinkedIn post just to say, hello, I'm trying to connect with you because I've got an interest in this and I find your post really interesting. It really does allow you to connect with those users in a more professional way, and oftentimes they'll try and interact with you just because you've sent them a nice message as well, okay? It's also a good place for initiating things like meetups. So maybe you want a coffee with someone just to see, or even just talk to them about a particular piece of work they've been doing, or even shadowing. It can be great for things like that, okay? It allows you to really network with people as well. So there's quite a lot of value there for that too. When you are sharing things, whether that is a post you've seen or maybe you're reposting something, make sure that you assign it value. So what I mean by this is share your insights, but also give credit where something's come from. So that might be that you found some really interesting article read. Instead of just hitting the repost button, maybe leave your thoughts down below in the comments, generate that discussion. You'll find people, even people outside of your network, will comment on it, and it could be a really good place to generate discussion. It's a great atmosphere for learning. It sounds really weird because I think oftentimes social media can be seen as quite a hostile environment, especially with things like Twitter or Instagram. But things like LinkedIn, it can be a great place to learn because there's people of various different positions in the industry or interests that you're looking at, and they can provide some invaluable insights. So make sure that you're not just hitting the repost button, you are commenting with your thoughts as well. Make sure that you engage on platforms professionally. So don't go in using things like internet slang. Make sure that you're remaining professional. You're saying your please and thank yous and things like that. It is really important and does go a long way of helping you, set up in the industry. But also think about, looking at the wider digital identity, is think about setting up personal websites and portfolios. This can be very good just to give out more information. If you're in things like the business world or even just in a creative industry, even things like data as well, creating a website is such an important thing to do just so people can see your work and they can get hands-on with something. I'm going to use the creative sector just as an example here, but it will apply to lots of different places as well. Let's say you have created a game or you created some fashion designer clothes. Creating a website not only allows you to express yourself with the way you lay things out, but it also gives a really great place to showcase your work and break those pieces of work into different categories as well. So maybe you have worked on some, personal projects, and as you get more and more into the industry, you can start posting your professional stuff as well. And it's just a great place just to showcase everything that you've been getting up to. Not only does this look good for future employers, it also looks good for people who are just starting out in the industry as well. And what I mean by that is, you might not feel it now, but one day someone could find your profile and they can get inspired by what you're doing. So if you create something that, you're proud of, it often can inspire other people as well. One thing that's really important, and I recommend you go and look at our digital communication workshop, is thinking about the digital etiquette in networking. So think about how you tone things, think about timing. The more you get into your professional life, you'll try and learn what an algorithm is. And this is, I'll try and sum up very quickly, but there's a lot that goes into this. It's thinking about things like, when is the best time to post something? So if you are posting something, are you posting it right in the morning? Will that hit the right demographic? Are you trying to reach a different country of people? So, are you posting in the right place for that target audience? Are you posting in the right time? So, that could be 1 p.m. CEST. That could be really beneficial for both, people who live in Britain, but also some of the countries around Europe. But then you're also missing the margin, which is America, because, 1 p.m. for them, they're either just waking up or some of them will still be in bed. So, maybe posting that post later on in the day might be more beneficial to reach that audience. However, then you're losing some of the European countries as well. So you've got to start thinking about that and learning what the algorithm is. So this also includes things like hashtags and things like that. So be sure to do some research into those as well. So one thing I recommend doing is set up a form of profile to build your identity, okay? So I recommend doing a LinkedIn, get a profile picture whacked on, get some description about what your interests, whether that is your job, something you're studying, or just some hobbies that you're interested in, and start to showcase your work. Get some pieces together, talk about your inspirations, talk about your process for these as well, talk about what was challenging, what you've learned. People find it really interesting and it can help them in their work as well. And can also generate some discussions around your work too. Visual communication, and when we talk about it, is talking about basic design literacy. And while there are some very complex design literacies that we can talk over, I'm going to discuss some of the more simpler ones, which then you can explore and expand in your own time. So the first one is thinking about color theory, okay? So on your profile, whether this is in the posts or whether you're developing your own website, color plays an impactful role when you design something, okay? On the screen, you'll see that certain colors mean certain things. Now, this does vary between cultures, and what I've put on the screen is a very Western interpretation of colors. So make sure you're thinking about your target audience. Essentially, it can often help you try and communicate an emotion that you're trying to convey, okay? So for example, red often in Western society means anger. So, you can use bits of red when you're trying to represent anger, for example. So take a look at the color wheel, see what works and what doesn't. One thing I will say is that think about accessibility. Certain colors will not work with other colors. The other circle I've put on the screen, oftentimes you're not supposed to use colors that match too closely together. So you shouldn't realistically use yellow and green because they're too close. But opposites generally are a little bit more attracting to the eye. So if we're looking at the yellow and purple, for example, those will fit a little bit better. Okay, so yes, there's a lot that builds into that, but what I'm trying to say is color can mean something and it will mean something to someone. So do a little bit of research about your colors. It's probably better for things like website building and portfolio building rather than a LinkedIn profile. That's one type of design that you can implement. Think about your typography, especially with text. Text, it can help your project flow. It can also enable you to create something that's really stylistic and eye-catching. However, it can be very hard to read against certain colors depending on how close the text is or the different color of the text. Think about accessibility for your users. Someone with dyslexia, they might find a certain typography that uses a lot of curvature quite hard to read. So it's really important to start thinking about that. What I'll do is I'll sum it up very quickly here. Think about your visual hierarchy. So think about if the text has weight, which is defined by the position, size, capitalization, and style of the font. Does this all work together? Is it hard to read? If you are creating a poster, make sure you're getting feedback from different users and people inside your target audience to see what they think, because it can be quite important and it can make a product flop if your text is too hard to read. This is also things like making sure that your line spacing's right, it's not overcrowded, it's not lacking information. Make sure that your alignment of text is correct, because sometimes alignment can be really important in just the way you read something. Now, just like I mentioned with color theory, text alignment can differ between society as well. So if you're trying to aim for a certain market, make sure that you're conducting that research there. And one thing that is really important no matter what you do is making sure that your brand/project remains consistent all the way through. Okay, so once you have an idea or theme, stick with it. If we're looking at a business, a great one to look at, for example, is Cadbury's. Even though they've had different marketing campaigns and different types of product, they always keep consistent. They always rock the royal purple, the milk jugs, and they keep the logo relatively the same. Okay, you want to apply the same thing to your project as well. Now, this can change between projects. I probably wouldn't change it if you're working on a business. I wouldn't have a massive redesign every couple of years between your company unless something massive is happening. You want to keep a consistency there. And that doesn't mean you can't change things up. It just means make sure you have an element, whether that's a logo, whether that is a set of branding colors that remains the same, because that builds brand recognition, just like Cadbury's with their purple and their milk jug logo. So why is developing an identity important? Hopefully I've conveyed this enough, but it helps you not only connect with people, it helps you explore new avenues and discussions, but it also helps you keep up with new trends and new information that's happening around you. This can help inform your practice, which is extremely important for keeping up to date. One thing that often gets overlooked is that it allows you to showcase your achievements. Oftentimes, we will do something and we will not celebrate it enough, okay? Showcase your achievements, be proud of what you do, because not only does this give you a nice tool for reflection later on down the line, whether that is where can I improve or what have I been up to. Time does fly very quick and you do lose a lot of what you do. So, make sure you celebrate things like achievements, but it also allows you to connect with people and expand your community as well. And like I mentioned earlier, it can be such a great tool to inspire people who are looking at what other people are doing in the industry as well. You never know, while you might be sending LinkedIn messages to connect with people today, in the future, it could be you receiving those messages instead. So, as I mentioned, first place I would start is try LinkedIn. Look what other people are doing around you, but also consider setting up websites as well. Okay, so I've got 2 great examples of some websites here. What I would recommend doing, again, is looking at people in your industry. I'm going to take film, for example, but this can apply to a business idea. It can apply to a coder's website. Is find someone who's in your industry, have a look at their website, collate different mood boards and see what they're getting up to. What do you like? What don't you like? This is a great place for personal expression as well. As you can see on this website, I've got someone here who is very artsy. Their page reflects that extremely well. If we look at someone like Bill Gates, for example, though, his is kind of what I expected from Bill Gates. He is a very straight to the point man. His website reflects him perfectly, in my opinion. So, a website is a great place for personal expression, but also sharing information too. So potentially give that a go. Some great places to start with things like this. For free websites, you've got things like Wix, and there's lots of websites and video tutorials you can access that will help you get started with Wix. There's Adobe Express, which has a website creator built into it now that has some paid features. If you're looking for something a little bit more premium and you've got some cash to spend, things like Squarespace can be such a good platform to start building that identity on as well. One thing I would recommend regardless, and you will have to spend a bit of money, is make sure that you buy or rent your domain name for a certain amount of time. It doesn't look so professional when you're creating a professional website and it has .wix at the end. It's kind of like a dead giveaway that you're just starting out. If you spend, generally they're between £50 to £100 if you just rent the space for a year, just so you've got that official domain name. It looks a lot more professional and it can really help bring users to your website. And oftentimes it's that shortened URL that it's able to provide. You're not having to type in every little bit that Wix or Adobe have added on to the end as well. Okay. So I'm going to give everyone a task today just because, I want a little bit of activity and it can just help you get started on everything that I've mentioned. So let's create a digital profile mockup, focusing on what you want to represent your identity. So what I mean by this is get yourself a profile picture. So let's get a photo of you that you're happy to put on a profile that you would share with other people in your industry. Let's get a bit of a bio created. Now this generally is around 2 to 3 sentences long. So this will say what you do, what your interests are, maybe if you're a student, or maybe you've just graduated, or maybe you're working for a particular company. Write down your top 3 values. Now, this can be what you want to see in your sector. This can be something that you're interested in. This can be even things like, I'm looking to create a cleaner working world with greener energy, for example. Think about what platform would best suit you. Like I've mentioned all the way through, LinkedIn is such a strong platform with connecting to other people and developing your ideas. So I would recommend that. But look at other things as well. Maybe there's a particular forum that you can join, such as like a coding forum. and see what other areas and spaces you can connect onto, and then draft a simple sample post. Now, this can be very much your hello world post. Hello, my name is X, Y, and Z. I am just starting out on my professional network. I am studying and developing in this area. I'm really passionate about this, this, and this. And think about what you want people to take away from your profile. So as I mentioned in the website, what do you want people to take away? Is it that you're quite an energetic and creative person? Is it that you want to focus on coding? Is it that you want to develop your product? Is it that you want to connect with people? Think about that and start developing those posts from there. So I've left those on the slide above. So be sure to have a look through and just create a simple draft for now. And then when you're ready, please take that step and start developing your profile now. The earlier you start, the more you'll have to build up for when you graduate. And if you are towards graduation, don't worry. It's never too late. Start posting things now. What have you learned during your university degree? What have you been creating? What are you looking forward to in the future? And what are you doing right now? Okay. That's the end of the session. Now, there's a lot of things that I've covered there. What I would say is please feel free to either book in for an appointment to talk about things like this. A great place to go to start to talk about building your identity, whether that is looking at LinkedIn profiles or CVs, is over at the Careers Hub. I'll leave a link in the description box below. They are a great team that will help you start to generate and create your content, gearing you up for that postgraduate life, or even just building connections now while you're a student. I can't express how useful they are to get involved with. But that's the end for me today. What I will do is I will suggest and highlight the different workshops that we're running. I've got all workshops on different digital skills. Be sure to head over and check those out as well. But thank you for watching. I hope everyone has a great day.